Welcome to another episode of The Frustrated CEO, where we help you, the CEO, and other listeners who are wanting to improve your organization, look at some really practical, helpful tips about to help you address some of your most pressing issues. Today, I'm here I'm returning after a hiatus with my two podcast hosts, Patrick Lyons. How are you today, Patrick?
I am well. It's so good to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you. And Leb Tannenbaum. Hey, Leb.
Hi, Patsy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did it.
I did.
Yes.
So for the listeners, yes, I have just completed a big bucket list where I walked 400 miles across northern Spain on a pilgrimage. And one of the lessons in thinking about for today is the importance of taking time for ourselves, time for reflection, time for ourselves. Not always 5 weeks, but whether it's 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 weeks, but how important that is to just reconnect. Today, we are here with Dr. Tom O'Connor. This will be the last time I call you Dr. Tom, okay? And I'll refer to you. Hi, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Patsy.
Tom O'Connor is internationally recognized for his communication, facilitation, and cultural change skills in the specialty area of criminal justice. A native of Ireland, so that's an added delight in today's interview. He holds dual citizenship in Ireland and the U.S. Tom has earned multiple degrees in law, philosophy, theology, and counseling. He currently assists the National Institute of Corrections with the implementation of pretrial reform across the U.S. as a member of its pretrial faculty. In addition to his best-in-class consulting work, Tom is also a professor of criminal justice at Western Oregon University. This cutting-edge work on facilitating whole systems change takes Tom to many states in the United States and enviously to countries including New Zealand, Australia, Canada, England, Ireland, and France. One of his companies, Transforming Corrections, challenges and supports criminal justice agencies to be more compassionate, collaborative, and achieve better outcomes. In his role as the administrator of religious services for the Oregon Department of Corrections, Tom led a team of 24 chaplains and over 2,000 volunteers to develop the Oregon model of humanistic, spiritual, and religious prison chaplaincy, where research has shown that this model reduces recidivism. His transformational work using the most innovative change strategies developed to improve culture, leadership, and teamwork through dialogue, one of his core focus areas, coaching and implementation science, has been so impactful that Tom started another company, Transforming Communication, to work with businesses, governments, and nonprofits. To reinforce this transformational work, Tom co-authored with Brad Bogue a new coaching practice model that combines 5 evidence-based practices. The model COVE, Coaching Options That Are Versatile and Effective, is a developmental model that works in all human service contexts. Tom is a lifelong learner, if you haven't guessed that already, with a unique perspective on the human condition. He grew up in a working class area of Dublin and lived as a friar. I'm glad you put this in here, Tom, a wandering monk for 9 years with a Catholic religious order called the Carmelites. Tom currently lives in Oregon, Salem, Oregon, as a matter of fact, with his wife and daughter. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Good to be.
We're going to be doing 2 episodes. In this first episode, we're going to be focusing with Tom around his role as a CEO in a growing organization. And I'm most curious, Tom, where you had a foundation in the corrections criminal justice arena. and how that transformed into transforming communication to start to work with different industries.
Yeah. Well, the body of my work for the last 35 years has been in the criminal justice system with prisons, probation, judges, police, across the board. So that was the beginning, transforming corrections, trying to bring the research that's there into practice. So this bridge between what we know is effective and what's not happening in the field, trying to help corrections in the criminal justice system to take that move. More and more as we work, though, even when we were working with the Irish government, we were working with the Department of Justice in Ireland, and they were running the prisons, probation, the courts, the police. They were kind of over everything, and we were working with the top leadership of that organization, and they said, could you use that name communication instead of corrections? Because corrections was too specific to some of their people. So that was really the beginning of us transitioning to that, transforming communication. And then we began to be asked by other organizations, healthcare organizations, social services agencies, other people were looking for the kind of thing that we had. So that need was presenting itself. So that's the reason for the transition. The other reason is that more and more we found this key practice, as you say, of dialogue was central to the work that we do, even with the implementation science and the evidence-based practices that we try and bring into the field. The dialogue was central. So the communication is the piece that we think is critical.
So what was it like switching industry so quickly? It wasn't like a premeditated or, kind of transition plan. It was like one day they asked you to.
Well, it took it. It's still some days I'm not sure where I am. But I have to say that the flow is more and more is with the transforming communication. So we're even considering a new corporate structure to expand that and work with that. So more and more, I think in my mind, I'm just becoming more at transforming communication, and the transforming corrections is fading.
Okay.
So Tom, that leads to a question. And by the way, thank you for joining us. I'm excited. This is fun. Patsy mentioned 2 episodes. The next one, we're going to dig into the communication piece. This one is more you as the leader. So you've made the decision, right? Your primary customer or client asks you to make this transition. You make that decision in your head, but you have a team of people.
Yeah.
How do you bring them along? Because I'm just thinking, as draw parallels to our listeners. The course of business can change, maybe not as dramatically as overnight, like you were asked, but it can shift, and you have to be able to bring people along with you. How did you do that?
Well, we're a tight team, and there's only 6 of us, the core group, and they all had corrections background, but they had a lot of other background as well. So they had, and almost they're moving me as well. So they, I think, are much more comfortable with the transforming communication. So that's helping. It hasn't been a problem with our team. I think it's kind of seamless, and we just keep developing. We're very developmentally focused, and I think we internally and externally, and that's what we're doing.
So what I hear in that answer is part of why it was such a seamless transition. You said we're a very tight team. How did you create a tight team? Because what I hear is that is if I'm a leader of an organization and I'm wanting that kind of seamless transition,
yeah,
then maybe something to work on is a tighter team.
Yeah, well, we do that by trying to use our own practices with ourselves. We always today we had a meeting and we took a few minutes of quiet time together. We just settled down, and then we began the meeting. We checked in with everybody. So we use the practices of dialogue very much, and we use the practices of centering, and then we use the practices of team building. We're looking at our own skills in communication all the time. We're giving each other feedback. So we follow this treatment model of feedback informed treatment. It's an evidence-based practice with the substance abuse system. And it's all about getting feedback from the people we're working with, and so that we can get better. And we give ourselves feedback all the time. So we've made it safe enough for us to give ourselves the feedback. That's the key. The safety, very high safety as a team.
Tom, you say that, the focus is more now on transforming communication, which could indicate that you're going to need to grow beyond the tight team of 6.
Yeah.
Right. And you've all clearly figured out a way to be in a context of safety with each other. What are your thoughts in terms of bringing other people in to this tight team that knows how to do all this good stuff and really develop that kind of trusted relationship with each other, and yet grow and expand to meet the needs of clients?
I might be foolish here, but I don't see that as too much of a challenge. I think the challenge is to grow, like you're saying. That's the challenge, is to bring the revenue in to be able to grow to the next stage, the next level of the organization. But in terms of the team, I think the collective nature of what we've got will carry to new people coming in. So I don't think it's an individually based thing. I think it's part of the culture, and I expect it just to continue. Because we do make it safe, but we do, I don't know if you've heard this, but I like this from Bob Keegan's work at Harvard, that we've 2 jobs at work, most of us. One is to show everybody how professional and confident and good you are. And the second job is to hide how incompetent, terrified you feel about the job. So we've brought both on top of the table. So we show both. We don't try and hide one and show the other. So that's how we work.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I'm curious, because I agree with you. Everybody around the table is that latter piece. We're all like, how do you initiate that kind of transparency?
Yeah, like doing all the things we do with the teams. We inquire into Discord when it happens. Not that we don't have Discord. Discord naturally emerges, but when it emerges, we inquire into it. And we have this bond, and that we nurture it though. We don't just take it for granted. I mean, every meeting we check in, we check out. We're kind of communicating all the time at both levels. Like, what are you feeling good about? What are you feeling challenged about? So we're really, really focused on our own development, our own internal work.
And I would say that, at least with some of the clients we work with, that's not business as usual. So what I'm hearing is the value of consciously and intentionally and consistently spending time together.
Yeah, because we see it with teams all the time. When they don't do that, they just get into trouble. So we've honed that more and more and more. And I guess it's, even as you're talking, I'm beginning to realize, oh gosh, maybe we were taking this for granted.
Yes.
I know our listeners can't see our heads nodding, but Patrick and Lev and I are enthusiastically nodding at that comment.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions off of this. One of them is, and this does frustrate some of the other guests we've had, and CEOs. You're wanting to select new people to come in, and you're confident. I hear you're confident in what you've done so far. You're confident in the culture. You're confident in the transfer, but you still have the challenge of picking someone who's going to really fit in, right? Who's going to be receptive, who's going to want that, who's going to want to, wow, I get to talk about what I'm scared of or what I think is, imperfect in me. I don't have to be an imposter, but that's not for everybody.
I can't wait, huh? So no, that's a good point, because it's not enough but for a competent staff, this is what we know from the implementation science literature. So there are 3 drivers of competency for any organization. And the first is staff selection, but you're selecting according to specific criteria. So you're interviewing and you are looking for specific skills and a kind of a coaching mindset that you're looking for, and you test for that in the selection process. And then you train according to the criteria, but then you've got to coach according to the criteria. So we all have coaches, including myself. So we don't let that go. So we know that the coaching is critical to get to the competency level. So to help people get there, that's the way we do it. We use those 3 drivers of staff competency.
Okay.
Hmm.
I hear that, I get that, and appreciate it. So just so that our listeners can understand, then, when you say you're getting coaching, are you getting coaching from one of the 6 and someone else on the team you're a coach for them? Is that how it works?
Sometimes I'll pull Samantha aside and say, Samantha, you got to help me here. And she will walk me through something. She will coach me through something, or I will coach her through something. Other times I'm getting coached. I know there's an area of development that I need, so I go find the right coach for that. So it
could be outside of the 6.
Yeah, it can be outside of the 6. Yeah. So I'm currently working with two coaches outside of the 6.
Ah, okay. And then you're also being clear about whether it's training or coaching.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
it could be training. Okay.
It's a big distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the train and pray model doesn't get you there. Okay? So that's one of the things that companies make a mistake in. They say, oh, here's a great idea, and it is a great idea. And they send people to train, and then they pray something's going to be different when they come back. It's not enough. So we that's so clear. So specific, but again, it's not just any coaching, it's coaching according to specific skills and specific criteria.
Right.
And you mentioned the word developmental, and I know we talked about that when we connected earlier this week, the importance of understanding the stages of a developmental. So it sounds like you're integrating that into your staff as well.
Yeah, because that's the developmental, and what we mean by that is that people's capacity for complexity, for working with complexity, depends on their own internal capacity for working with complexity. So that means, there are stages of development. Again, this is the work coming out of Keegan and Lisa's work at Harvard, that there are stages of adult development. Adults work through these different stages. And the more developed you can go, the more complex you're able to be. And the data is clear that more complex leaders are more effective. So when we're coaching, we're kind of taking we call it an adaptive approach to coaching. So this is adaptive leadership where people are changing themselves. They're not trying to change their context. They are developing themselves so that they're able to see things more complexly and work with things more complexity.
So what does that require of you as the CEO, who may want people to be further, developed than they actually are, or people reach a certain place and they're like, this is as far as I want to go?
Yeah. Well, I don't want people to be further developed than where they are. I just want them to be where they are.
Okay.
But I do want them to be committed to developing. So we are totally fine with we've brought some interns in, and they're just at different levels. They're young. They're just kind of, so it's great. So, but we do have this culture of development, and nobody's going to stay with us unless they're developing. I mean, they're just not going to do that. That's the joy. We all get joy in that because we know we're growing. We know we're feeling more competent. The competency thing is a big driver for people.
So are you saying that people self-select if they decide they're really not up for the challenge, or you actually
think
help
that's
them
true.
self-select.
Oh, I think they're going to self-select, Patsy. They're not going to stay. Yeah, yeah, and we've seen that.
Mm. Mhm.
Tom, because I think you're hitting on certainly a frustration for CEOs. In fact, Leb and I, even just in the last episode, we talked a lot about development. We're speaking more specifically about the development of next level leaders and in larger organizations, but across all employees development. It's always a challenge. It's a challenge to figure out, to find the time for development. It's a challenge sometimes to find the money, right? The resources. We talked about that in the last episode. There was a 2019 training industry survey that showed every dollar you invest in leadership development returns 415% to the bottom line when you look at all the
Really?
but even so, organizations still struggle with limited resources. And how do you, I'm thinking with your own people, how do you decide when and where to invest in the development of your people? Is it they come to you and say, this is what I want to do? Is it you come to them and say, here's what I want you to do? Is it a shared, how involved are you in that process?
I'm pretty involved because we have a core set of competencies, and that's what we're using all the time. And so people on the team, they want to get those, but they're usually just desire for them. So it's kind of not too hard to to get people going in that direction. But then there are other times when people come, hey, I'd like to do this. So this idea of coaching, if you can get people's individual growing edge, what's your leading edge of development? Where is it for you? What would you like to be able to do that you can't do? And then get some coaching in that. That's the way we work as well. So it's not uniform for everybody, but there is a set of practices that we use. And again, with that feedback system that we have with our clients, we're always getting feedback on whether we're hitting those benchmarks or not.
When you're working with clients, Tom, have you, this is a two-part question. Has it changed since COVID? And are you struggling to do what you do effectively in a hybrid environment and online with people?
Well, I'm a fan of COVID because COVID.
That's the second time this week I've heard that. I'm like, what?
There were a lot of great things that came out of COVID. Yeah.
COVID gave me more time, less time traveling, and gave
Yes.
me more time to grow and to learn. So I was able to go into places that I wanted to for a long time that were dormant. And so I got time, and, I'm so grateful for that. But COVID did something else for us because we think that reality is what you can see, but reality is really what's intelligible, where meaning is, and meaning is invisible. So Zoom has helped us to understand that I don't have to be in Tennessee to talk with Patsy and be having a good conversation about what Tennessee is like on Zoom. So we're able to, Zoom has taken us out of the need for physical presence, for meaning to happen. So I really like the environment of doing it online, but I do believe that you really need times to touch base physically as well, so interspersed. But I think we can do a huge amount this way.
So speaking from you as leader, and Leb, you actually both just touched on it. There have been some good things that came out of the pandemic. One challenge for leaders has been, how do you maintain a culture when you're not all together in one place? So I'm assuming that your people can work virtually as well. Yes. How do you maintain? Has your culture, two-parter? Has your culture been impacted by the pandemic, and how do you maintain it?
To be honest, it hasn't. I haven't noticed that, Patrick. So I haven't. it's not
Good.
it's not something that has come up for us really, and we are in different places, but we now I should say, because if we had, this is part of my own personal frustration, but if we had more resources, we would have done more time together that we couldn't. So that was the rubbing point there. And that didn't know. So you're right, that did affect us. So that's real. It is challenging you can't do it when you're just virtual.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So core competencies, I'm assuming those are different than your values.
Yes, and
So,
yes and no.
I think our listeners would want to hear a little bit more about that, because that's also been challenged by the hybrid environment. Is, are we keeping our core values alive? Can we? We've had some CEOs say, I just don't know how we can do all this online.
Yeah. Say more, because
Well,
about
you're drawing a distinction, right, between core values and in a sense you have two companies, but let's focus on transforming communication. And then there are a set of core competencies that new people get to review and say, I think I'm pretty good here and here and here, but I know I'm going to have to do this like pretty quickly, and then maybe this is coming, so to me, I hold core competencies maybe closer to development, and core values closer to the why we exist and the culture that we want to create together and live in.
Yeah, I see it a little bit differently, because I think
Yes.
to stay, I find it harder to stay with some of the values than I can some of the skills. So you've got certain listening skills, you've got certain speaking skills, you've got certain skills in a team, but then our values, and we take them from the field of motivational interviewing. It's a way of helping people have conversations about change. So they have 4 core values, and one is acceptance, one is compassion, one is evocation, and one is partnership. So am I, anytime I'm having a conversation with somebody, am I in partnership? I can fall out of that easily, and I have to find a way back into that. Am I in compassion? Am I in evocation? Evocation is drawing out. It's like helping somebody to give birth to what's inside of them. It's a midwife. So I can fall out of that, and I'm trying to put something into somebody. I'm trying to help them change. I'm going to make you change. Oh, you got to see, and I'm out of my values. But the skills are almost easier than the values. So I think you really need to stay with both of them.
Are there a few words that you might offer to describe what the culture is like there?
Acceptance, compassion, evocation.
Yes. Okay.
No, I really think we do care for each other. We do listen to each other, and we do want to hear from each other. We really want to know. We're not very hierarchical. If need be, we if we need to bring structure, we can do that. And somebody needs to make a decision, we can go hierarchical. It's a little bit of a stretch for us, but we can go there. But I think that collaborative nature. So authentic cooperation is the source of legitimate power. That's what we believe. So what is authentic cooperation like? How do people cooperate? That's basically through conversation. That's how we discover what's the intelligent thing, what's needed to be done, what's responsible, what's loving. So that notion of collaboration is core to us, and core to the people that, the teams, and that's what we find people need. That they really need help there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tom, I'm intrigued by the idea of evocation. How do you do that? You say it's drawing something out of someone or helping them birth an idea or a thought versus, implanting one into them. How do you do that with your team?
Well, that's really lovely what you're saying, Patrick. So what is it about evocation that intrigues you?
I think in my mind, I mean, I think it's a beautiful thought as opposed to the drive-by of just, hey, I got you for a second. Here's my thought. I'm just kind of emptying, leaving you, and now I'm on to the next thing. Versus I feel like, and again, I'm just learning it now, so I could be off, but there's like an element of seeing someone, of helping them. I often talk about unleashing greatness. Like there's greatness in everyone, and I want to know what is it in you, and like let me see it because it's awesome, and don't hold it back. And so that maybe that's why it resonates with me. If I can help somebody do that evocation, am I helping them even wow themselves, surprise themselves?
Yeah, you see, that's beautiful, right? So your passion is coming out there. Your desire for that. You're looking for that, and you did key into the evocation. So I just asked you a question that was evoking. What is it that's That's what I did, and I was happy to, because so that's an inquiry. It's a certain kind of inquiry. It's an evocation. It's not it's so it's an inquiry that evokes, and it's beautiful because it just leads to where we are now.
Very sneaky, Tom O'Connor.
And then Tom, so what does it require for you to, your inner self and the way you're manifesting it, to be with Patrick in that way, or to be with somebody in that way, to be able to evoke? Because it is, again, it's not a business as usual or interaction as usual stance.
Yeah, so I think that is a development, and that it requires some groundedness in myself, that I'm able to listen to myself at the same time as listening to Patrick. So I'm able to be in this loop between both of us. It's really kind of a way of connecting and staying in that, and that does take some work, because I can drop out of partnership. Going back to your question, Lev, you see, I can drop out of that. He does something that annoys me. Am I able to stay? Am I able to hold it? So that's the practice. That's the skill development as well. Yeah. But these are
continually, yeah.
Yeah, these are learnable, coachable, doable, teachable skills.
But what I'm hearing is it requires a deep awareness of your own why. I mean, we're lab with the client is revisiting Simon Sinek's, start with why. And so knowing that, and then having the good of the other person in mind, and then being able to be an observer of the complexity that interaction.
Beautiful. So just you're just out there holding it up for us. That's it.
And I guess a willingness to say, which is kind of a myth around CEOs and CEO leadership. Leaders are supposed to have all the answers.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, in this moment, I really don't know, so let's figure it out.
Yeah, that's right. You going into the unknowing. I didn't know where Patrick would go with the question. Where's he going to go? I don't know. And this is why conversations, you can't control them. And this is going into the adaptive versus technical thing that we talked about, Patsy, that I think is critical for leaders to catch, right? So this notion of what's an adaptive challenge, what's a technical challenge. So it's coming out of the work of Ron Heifetz. It's really brilliant work, but it's very simple idea. Once people get it, you start seeing it everywhere. So when I was with the Department of Corrections, In 8 years, when I was there, we built 6 new prisons, and we went from having, what was it? We went from having 8,000 people in prison to 14,500. So we spent millions of dollars and huge woman power, manpower to build those prisons. It was so easy. We just knocked those prisons out. The governor said, "Do you know how to build prisons?" "Yes, we do." "Do you know how to run them?" "Yes, we do." "Okay, here's a bunch of money. Go and do it." Sure. Gave it. It was easy. Right. So be quiet. It was technical. We already knew how to do that. The adaptive challenges. For years, for 40 years, we've been talking about solitary confinement in the prison system. Oh my God. We've done some research, and the people who are in solitary, when they leave and join the community, they all get out eventually, 95% of people. They are more likely to harm people when they get out if they've been in solitary. Oh, we're doing something, we're putting them into solitary, we're making them worse. We have to change that. For 40 years, we've been trying to change that. We don't know how to do that. Right? Because it's an adaptive challenge. If we were to run a prison system without solitary, everything would have to change. And we don't know how to do that really in America. Germany knows how to do it. Holland knows how to do it. America doesn't, because it's embedded in our system. So that's the adaptive challenge. And that requires changing us, not the system, to get there.
Mm.
So I don't want you to give too much of that away, because you're kind of like now you're like advertising episode 2, which is we will dive into that in more detail. So maybe you're the you're doing the ad for the next episode. So as we're moving into that, perhaps it's time to in our podcast where we want to do our Let's Get Practical, which is for our listeners, how do we capture those salient kind of points from our discussion with Tom that you can take out as soon as you finish listening and apply them to the work you're doing as a CEO with some of the challenges you face. So the way we do that is, Tom, we give you the first opportunity to identify what are 1 or 2 points that you want to make sure that we capture. And then we'll hear from Patrick Lebenai.
Well, the first thing, I love your name, the Frustrated CEO. So maybe we can talk more about that in the second thing. But first thing I would do is befriend your frustration, because your frustration is telling you something important. And maybe I can show you later about how you do that. But befriend your frustration, go into it, don't avoid it. Use those tensions within inside of you to name or articulate what's your growing edge. Right? What would I like to be able to do better that I'm not able to do at the moment? That would make a big difference. Who do I admire can do something, right? We all have I wish I could do that. So you're going to know and your frustration is going to help you discover that. Third point is get a coach who knows something about that, who can help you do that. And then last thing is deliberately practice. Now practice and get feedback consistently on your development in that area.
Excellent.
Good.
Excellent. So Patrick, what do you have to add?
Well, even though he tricked me, I'm gonna have to go with learn the value of evocation. I just think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful concept. Learn the value of evocation. That is drawing something out of someone, helping them birth an idea or a thought or express themselves, rather than driving your idea or thought into them. I think that was really cool. And Thomas, it's funny. I walked into that unknowingly, and it was a great example. So well done by you. I loved the point of inquire into Discord when you have it. Right? Don't just ignore it. Don't. It's an opportunity, I think, and maybe even an opportunity to use evocation in that process. Yeah. Tell me more. What is it? So I thought that was really cool. I'll pause there, and then if we circle back around and I have any unleft or unused, then I'll give another one.
Unleft.
Unleft. I'm going to make up words. Just try to follow along. Who's next?
Lev's next.
Okay. I love the letting go of not a train and pray model. And so often that happens, especially, a great motivational day, right? Followed by, I forgot a lot of it. And the CEO is praying that it really made a lasting impact. So I love that. Thank you for that. That, being adaptive is valuable. And it sounds like we should understand that, and that it can help you handle more complexity. And, complexity and simplification sometimes are misunderstood. So I want to learn more from you about that, and just the notion of it's okay to nurture each other, and it's actually essential.
Lovely.
Patsy.
I would add, make it safe create an environment of safety for feedback, and spend conscious time together. Be with what is, kind of goes back to Patrick's point. Check in with about what's going well and what am I need help with. Be very intentional and inclusive about that.
Yep.
And I think this is slightly different, but use your own practices with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I know a couple of organizations that have failed to do that and hasn't had good outcomes. So anything else you want to add, Tom, before we close this episode?
You guys are great listeners. That's no, I think that's all I'd have to say. I think that's beautiful what you all said.
Great. So I will close by thanking each and every listener for joining us today, especially the CEOs who've hopefully gained a lot of nuggets of wisdom that you can immediately use. Thank you, Tom, for being a very engaging guest. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Tom at transformingcommunication.org is our website. There's a Transforming Corrections website, a Transforming Communication website. Email me or telephone 503-559-5752.
Great. Thank you again. And Tom just gave us a teaser for episode number 2. So if you're interested in looking at how you address issues that just won't go away and you can't seem to solve, stay tuned for episode number 2. Thank you again for joining us. If you want to listen to other episodes of The Frustrated CEO, please go to the frustratedceo.com. And Patrick always puts a plug in, as I do as well, for if you are wildly in favor of what we're doing, give us some likes, and we welcome your comments and any suggestions for future shows. So with that, I will close this episode and close the episode. Thank you each for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.